It is.
Okay. Hello, everyone. Welcome to TwinSight.
Yay.
I am Lynne Streeter Childress.
I am Leslie Gray Streeter, and our special guest is...
Oh, Tina Streeter. I'm Tina Streeter.
Yes, and you notice we all have the same face, which is
we do pretty much
disconcerting for all of you, but we love it. So, okay.
Yeah,
So, that's our Jennifer Lewis imitation. Okay.
Exactly.
This TwinSight is a pop culture podcast.
And she's our mom, by the way.
And she's our mom. I hope they got that.
Nobody guessed that, right?
Yes.
They could have thought older sister or aunt.
True.
That girl, she knows just what to say, man.
It's
She's
true.
brilliant.
But as I was saying, TwinSight is a pop culture podcast about redemption and reinvention arcs in pop culture, in TV and movies. Almost every show in some aspect has some element of this, but we thought it would be fun to talk about. Both Lynn and I, and also our mother, have had significant periods of reinvention in our lives personally. I am a former newspaper journalist who's also an author. I'm a widow who became a single mother. I moved my whole family in a pandemic. It's a whole situation. Our mother became a nurse. She went back to nursing school, finished her master's degree at 64.
And after having had a career of almost 30 years as a psychiatric social worker.
Exactly. So reinvented. And Lynn?
I'm in theater, and I wasn't going to be in theater. I was going to be a social worker. And then early on, I got into theater, and I have been here for 27 years.
Wow.
In theater. And I recently, as in 5-6 years ago, started my own theater company. And yes, it's lots of pivoting and such. It's a whole nother conversation, a podcast about personally our family and us moving lots of places and reinventing ourselves, and I wasn't going to plan this. This is our dad, and he who died 9 years ago yesterday. And
9 years ago yesterday, yeah.
And this is I know it sucks. We hate it. We loved him, which is why we hate that. But anyway, I'm showing this picture that he was the impetus for us moving and reinventing ourselves as a family, literally around the world. So
there he is. So this is for you, Butch.
Butch Streeter. So all of that to say, on today's episode of I keep wanting to say the show is called Twinspiration, and it's not.
It's called what? You keep wanting to say
it's TwinSight, but I keep wanting to say it's Twinspiration, but it's not.
Why did we call it Twinspiration?
Because I think somebody else had that.
Probably. I'm pretty sure we
would have stolen it. We would have stolen it from them. See?
That's what I'm saying. So sorry, person, don't sue us.
When you center yourself in things. But anyway, on today's episode, we are talking about a movie which I've probably, no joke, seen between 10 to 15 times in my life. And if you have a child under the age of 10 to 12, you've probably seen this movie a lot too. And that movie is Sing. Sing came out in 2016. Mm-hmm. And it is an animated movie by DreamWorks and starring Matthew McConaughey, right? McConaughey as a very enthusiastic and aspirational koala bear named Buster Moon, who owns a theater. It's been his lifelong dream to own this theater because he had great memories of being a kid going there with his dad, and that's when he realized that this was the life for him, and he buys it, but in the years since is not doing well. He owes money to people who've worked on the shows, to the stagehand, he is behind on the mortgage to the bank that owns the mortgage on his theater. But he's always looking for the next thing. The next thing is going to be the thing, right?
Okay. Yeah.
Where he is. And so he organizes or envisions and puts together a singing contest that he thinks is going to revive interest in his theater. And his faithful assistant, Mrs. Crawley,
Yes.
a artificial eye that falls out onto the keyboard. So instead of the flyer saying that the prize is $1,000, which is what he had planned, it bounces on the zero a few more times and it's now $100,000. And literally the flyers get spread around the city because they are sitting on an open ledge and the fan and the wind propel them out and everyone thinks it's $100,000. And the show, so all these people come, they all have these expectations, they're different animals who all have some redemption in mind. This is why they're going for this $100,000. And they become like a family, but the themes that run through it are dreaming, becoming the thing that you always wanted to be. And sort of next to it does that give you the right to kind of use other people or other people's electricity? Their electricity goes out because he hasn't paid the power company. So he's been using the electricity from another business. He unplugs their stuff and the electricity into a cord from his theater. And he owes people money. So it's this whole thing about who suffers for your dream and how is your dream so important that it doesn't matter that other people get hurt by it. So while Buster Moon is the protagonist of the movie,
you said Moon. Yeah.
Moon.
We're from Baltimore.
I'm from Baltimore.
Sorry. Yes.
So while Buster Moon,
we heard you.
That hurt to say that like that.
Yeah.
While he is the main character of the movie, there are different characters who all have some kind of arc. So Leslie, what are the questions that we sort of strive to cover and talk about every week, no matter what movie, TV show, whatever we're looking at? What are they, Leslie?
In particular, we have these because A, it's nice to have a theme, B, because we could talk forever and never get to the point. And y'all be like, why are they still
I never noticed that.
Shush.
Mother.
Silencio. Okay.
See how they talk to their mother.
And you see that we're both saying that when we're in a different city from her, because we would never say that to her in her.
Okay, so here are our questions. Our questions are, what is the movie about? Which Lynn has already explained. Who is it? What character or characters are the person who were set on this redemptive arc to this redemptive story and a reinvention? How does the movie show that, movie or TV show that? And is it successful at the end? Last week when we did The Devil Wears Prada, we decided, no, there's still terrible people at the end of the movie.
Yeah, they are.
Terrible. So I will just say, I love this movie because, for a lot of reasons, mostly because I think they did such a good idea with matching the animal to either exactly what you think the personality is supposed to be or flipping it. But like the mouse is really mean and the elephant, because elephant and mice have a thing, the elephant is really timid, so it's kind of a restructuring. Koalas, I don't know what koalas are supposed to be other than cute, and this one's kind of shady.
Very shady.
The pig is very cleanly, very organized, very like engineering level brains.
She's an engineer.
An invention. So I just thought that it was very clever. As a writer, I'm always looking at how the writers in movies use what might seem like obvious tropes, if we can use we can get that deep with words like tropes, but use those things and what they do with them. And I just thought that it was a very well written movie, which does not always happen. That like the gorilla, who's like this big thuggy family, has a beautiful, gentle singing voice.
Yeah.
Things like Elton John, which is interesting because then Taron Egerton played Elton John after this. So this is like his audition singing I'm Still Standing. I thought it was great. The first time he did it as a gorilla, as an animated gorilla. So anyway, Mommy, why is it that you picked this movie when we said, hey, could you want to be on our show because you have to, because you're our mother? Why was it this movie that immediately came to mind?
I think partially because I had just recently seen it. We had all watched it together.
And it was her pick. It was her pick.
And it was running around in my head. And you all know how I am when things stick in my head. A lot of times they just stay there for weeks. And I usually take that as a sign that there's something I'm supposed to be carrying away from it. And also, I just liked the movie. Like you said, it's well written. I liked the characters. It was funny, but it taught some deeper stuff. And so when you talked about the redemption arc, that came to mind immediately. Oh yeah, Buster Moon and everybody in there, including Nana Noodleman, had a redemption
And
thing.
Lynn, explain who Nana Noodleman is.
Yeah. So Nana Noodleman, voiced by Joanna Lumley, but sung by Jennifer Hudson.
Yes.
One Through the Way. It's beautiful.
Go, Lynn.
To give back homeward. We didn't pay for that. Sorry. Sorry. But Golden Slumbers. Nana Noodleman is actually sort of the impetus for Buster Moon's dream at the beginning, even though he didn't realize it, because she was a famous singer and she was who he saw at the theater that he now owns when he was a kid, when his dad took him on the balcony to see the show that she was in. So in the years since, she is this, I guess, retired recluse,
very rich
singer. And she also, it turns out, is the grandmother of his best friend.
Eddie, his best friend's name is
in that movie. Eddie the sheep, who I adore. So she is his best friend's grandmother, and he asks her for an investment in his theater, and she comes to see it, and then things go wrong and it doesn't work. Things go ridiculously wrong. Spoilers! And see the movie if you haven't. So,
and by the way, disclaimer, as we had in the first one, we are going to be talking about some things. We just said spoiler. This is a 5-year-old movie. So if you have not seen this 5-year-old movie and you're afraid that we're going to reveal some plot points, go pause it now and go watch it and come back, because we're going to talk about things.
Right.
Yeah, we are. But yes, she has. So Mommy, kind of explain who she was, about what you were thinking about her and her like possible redemption.
Yeah, because as you said, she starts out as this reclusive, very rich, and apparently still very influential sheep. And she's someone that the rest of the world has known. But it's interesting that Mike, who's just kind of rude, when somebody said something about Nana Noodleman maybe sponsoring the show, he said, Nana Noodleman, is she still alive? So that points to her reclusiveness, but apparently she's still a very influential person, a very influential part of the business world. And so because Buster Moon has his back up against the wall, he thinks of her, and maybe he thinks that because he is friends with her grandson, that will help. And at first, the whole show that he's put together goes off very well, but then it goes back to the whole thing about how he did it. I think, Leslie, you mentioned that the way that he did it by stealing electricity from,
Shady.
and even the, I'm sorry, go ahead.
It's just shady.
It
You
is
know?
very shady, not to mention illegal. It's not just
It
shady,
is
it is
illegal.
beyond shady.
Well,
And
mommy, I don't know
go
why I'm
ahead.
echoing, but sorry about that. Tell me a little about the characters. Before we started recording, we were going through some of the other characters in the movie, and all of them go through changes and have sort
They
of
do.
a redemptive or different, sort of reinvention in some ways, personality wise or focus wise or whatever. Tell me a little about the characters.
Well, we've talked about Buster Moon, and when I started thinking about it, he was the main one that I thought about, um, because he goes from being this wide-eyed, theater-struck little boy to wanting to be able to own this theater, and he gets that dream, but he doesn't get it by himself. He talks about the fact that his father worked for 30 years washing cars so that he could buy this theater. So he's excited about the idea of the theater reinventing itself too. And I think that's something else we have to talk about, that the actual structure goes through changes, which
You are so smart.
they make you learn to talk like that in social work school
There you go.
and in nursing school. But
Um,
the thing is, he also feels guilt, of course, over the way that he has not used this gift from his dad, because it was a gift from his dad. And he realizes what his dad had to go through when his situation changes and he winds up as the car washer
with his body.
with his body. So,
Which,
and I love
which
Miss Crawley. We talked about her, that she was loyal, but at times somewhat inept. But
yes.
she goes through a change too. I thought that a lot of it was based around the changes that she sees her boss go through, because she knows what he's doing.
That's really
It's,
cute.
it's literally that scene where he's washing the car. I called Leslie yesterday and said that scene is comic gold. It's one of the funniest things. Literally, I've seen this movie probably between 10 and 15 times and was almost mad that I had to watch it pay, because I don't have, it's not on any of the things I don't pay for, that I pay for anymore.
Right.
So I paid to watch it yesterday and I was almost mad because I've seen this movie a million times, but it was great to look at it.
Right.
Again. But that scene is hilarious.
When he flings himself, because guys, if you haven't seen this, when he's saying he's washing the cars with his body, that he jumps onto the windshield of the car and his big koala ears are washing the car. There's something almost Charlie Chaplin kind of sad, funny, balletic about it, that he flies to the air and it seems almost pathetic, but it's like he has nothing left but himself and his body, and sort of the return to what his dad did, and the humbleness of it. Because the thing about it is that Buster Moon is voiced by Matthew McConaughey, and you think of Matthew McConaughey now as like he plays fast talking guys, he plays lawyers, he's a Lincoln lawyer,
Right.
he plays, or like people who kind of hustle and do their thing and talk really fast, and Buster Moon is that as a koala. But he also has a really pure heart in there, because as mommy said, he's doing this because of the love that he found. It's a very pure love that was very organic, that happened as a little boy, and because it's tied to the memories of his father, and the sacrifice of it, he does let some things get away from him. When we talked about this movie last week, I watched it with my mother, and we talked about, when you're young and you're hoping that somebody else has Wi-Fi because you haven't paid for Wi-Fi and you're trying to steal people's Wi-Fi, or, I know people who like, you do what you can, and you tell yourself it's in the name of the hustle. You tell yourself it's in the name of what you have to do to get there.
And then it won't always last. Things are going to get better, and maybe even I'll pay them back.
Yeah, and don't do that. Lynn actually had said to me, there's a scene in the beginning when he's doing this voiceover, like he's being interviewed and he's basically talking to himself. Right. And he goes, "Who is that guy?" He goes, "I am Buster Moon." And it's supposed to be very, dramatic and momentous. Lynn has said that she feels like Buster Moon sums her up in some ways as an artist. Tell me why.
Yeah, and it's so funny. I wrote that in my notes. I said, don't we all do recaps of our lives for imaginary documentaries?
Of course we do. I do.
Yes. But yeah, I saw a lot of myself in him. So I don't have my own space. So I don't have a theater building. But the idea, though, of using everything that you have to make magic out of very little is what I do. And
Yeah.
I, you know, I all of my props and costumes are here in my house, and I'm like, we need a whatever. And I use the same sheep, lamb, whatever, crook over and over and over again. And so I saw that in him, the hustle of trying to do everything you could do to get your dream, but I do pay people. So without stealing other people's stuff. But having that heart of the show going on, I saw a lot of that in myself. I actually even had him as my avatar on my profile picture for a couple days, I think, after I saw the movie on Facebook, because I love the movie so much and because I identified in him in that way. But this sort of led me, though, I was thinking about this morning, we were going to talk about, and I am thinking that what I'm about to say is going to come up a lot when we have these conversations about the movies, because I think it's part of what happens to people before they get redeemed, or remade or change their minds or their lives or whatever. But a lot of it is, and I'm thinking about this a lot about this with The Devil Wears Prada, is this idea of that there are things that you have to do in your line of work that might hurt other people, demean other people,
Offend other people.
because that's the way that it is, right? Because that culture has become, well, maybe you have to tell a few tall tales, or you have to over exaggerate, or you have to not pay people a lot, or you have to, like in The Devil Wears Prada, you have to not have a social life and not have a life or a personal life, because everything is supposed to be at the expense of this business, because that's just the way it is. And it's this whole idea of where in that do individual people have the wherewithal to say, I'm not going to do this, and I'm not going to be a part of this, and I'm going to either step out of it, or I'm going to do what I can to change what's happening. And because that was one of my questions is, can your redemption happen at the expense of other people? And if you hurt other people, are you really redeemed?
Well, and
if you haven't made peace with that. Go ahead, Leslie.
I would have to say, I think this is not in defense of the Buster Moons of the world, who I love him, but I think also hurting, quote unquote, hurting people is complicated. I think in this sense, yes, it was very clear that he did things like, there's the character Ash, who's like a punk rock porcupine played by Scarlett Johansson, and he is not listening to her.
No,
that he hears that she's got this very, first of all, when he gets people critiques, he insults them, doesn't realize, really terrible, except for this one thing. You're like, what? So he puts her on the show without her awful boyfriend, which causes problems, but he's not listening to who she is. He says, you're a cute girl, you're a cute teenage girl, so you would like a cute pink dress and this thing, Call Me Maybe. And she's literally sobbing. And his face is like, what? Because he wasn't listening to her tell him she didn't want to do this.
Right.
Because he was so focused on his dream, and he assumed that he knew best. And all of these other people were spokes in the wheel of his dream.
Absolutely.
They were not actual people with their own dreams, with their own motivations. Like my favorite is the elephant, who's voiced by Tori Kelly.
Yeah.
Who I love her because she had this talent that she was afraid to show. She was timid about it, and so she actually tries to audition. She gets really nervous. The mouse bullies her. She leaves. She comes back and only gets as far as him once again talking over her, saying, yes, you can be my assistant. You can be my stage manager. And that's not what she wanted, but she accepted it.
Yeah, and I saw that piece as at least some movement towards being in the environment, and that was better than her hiding out at home.
It was.
And what's so interesting is that even when, I think it's when the frogs leave, the frogs being jumped by Van Halen into a fight, and they leave and he needs another act. I've always loved this storyline that then he goes to her and says, hey, so do you want to be in the show?
Right. It's like something finally got through. He finally heard from the tunnel that he was in.
Exactly.
It finally caught up with him. Oh, wait a minute. She does have talent.
But right. And then she says, well, yes, he goes, okay, I'll take that as a maybe.
Yes. But don't we do that though? Once again, when we decide, because like, for instance, when I moved, when my mother and I and my son, our son really, were living in Florida, and we decided for many reasons that 2020 was the year, but we were going to move even before the pandemic, because
we've been talking about it for a long time.
We're talking about it, and my mother has a relationship up here, and Lynn's here, and my grandmother's up here, and I wanted to be around a more diverse group of people for my son, and we're like, let's do it. And all these other things happen, but I had to, ultimately, my mother left it up to me. I mean, because she could have moved without us anyway. And I was like, if I can't figure out how to leave yet, and you need to move, you need to go. But I couldn't just say, this is what Leslie needs to do, so this is what we're going to do. We both decided, and I couldn't make her sort of like the pawn for, I didn't come home and say, good news, I've booked the movers, we're moving next Thursday. You know, I've taken the liberty of putting your name on some things. Let's go. I didn't do that because
I didn't do that.
I did not. My life isn't just about what I need. It's about what us as a family and a unit needed. And I think that once Buster Moon realized that other people, because he never even asked, you know.
No,
people.
He thought he knew best. And like you said, it was his dream that was the most important thing.
Yes.
And when the redemptive arc came around, or when he actually went around it, then he did start to pay attention, but he had to go through a lot of stuff, a lot of humiliation and a lot of other stuff before he got.
And so there's a part in the movie where we talked about he has gotten Nana Noodleman to come to his theater to kind of preview this show.
Right.
Sort of like the investor tryout to sort of see, basically he's auditioning for her to invest.
Right.
He has hired these, what are they, what were they, electric eels?
They're eels.
These electric eels, and he's built this, I think they're electric eels who actually worked at another restaurant.
The restaurant where he was stealing the power from, by the way.
Right. So they came to work for him for this thing. And so he was lighting up the stage. He had built this beautiful like glass.
Oh, it was really beautiful.
Back, and they were like swimming and whatever. But something was put together shoddily. And so Mike the mouse, who's voiced by Seth MacFarlane, who beautiful voice, horrible person who owes these bears money.
He's a gambler.
Money is mine. So anyway, so he comes in, they go, give us some money. Anyway, the bears, right, they stomp on the stage or stomp on the stage or whatever. So the stage breaks, water everywhere, basically.
Because they realize he doesn't have any money.
Right.
Yeah, and they were really there to kill him if they didn't get their money.
Yeah. Right. So it explodes the whole theater, and the theater literally goes up in smoke. I love that idea, Mommy. I'd never thought about that, about the building itself. Renaissance. So he is kind of like, this stinks. He kind of goes, because he was living at the theater.
Buster.
Buster White. Yeah, so he goes
in a drawer in his desk.
In a drawer in his office. And he goes and stays with Eddie, his friend who's rich, who lives in his parents' pool house. And the other animals come to him and say, Mr. Moon, we love you. We believed in what we were doing and we believed in you.
Right. And we forgive you.
And we forgive you. And he has this conversation with Mina, who is this shy elephant, where he basically says to her to give up. And that was, I wrote down, that crap hurt. When he says, and I thought it was such a beautiful scene and such a sort of brave sort of scene for someone to say that in a kid's movie. Of course, he gets proven wrong. But she was like, you did so much for me. You helped me. And he goes, you know what, Mina? I told you could dream, but don't do that. You and I are gonna do the things that we want to be. We're never gonna be as great as we can be. So you just basically need to give up. And that was like, ugh. And for some,
I know that scene got me too.
Right. For somebody who was as timid as she was, that could have either taken her down the wrong path and just ended her. But what it did was take her in the other direction, where she was like, you know what, she's wrong. And
he's wrong.
He hears her singing literally from the rubble of his theater, which she goes in and he hears her sing Hallelujah, which is another thing about how that song gets misinterpreted. But anyway, whatever.
But it's irritating. It's so irritating.
It is not a gospel. Hallelujah is not a gospel song.
Words mean things.
It's not. But the word meaning, as you said, it's that word was made to mean a particular thing, which give praise to God. And I understand that that's not what the song is doing, but I don't know. Sometimes in our culture, that's what happens. Somehow it hits you.
I mean, it's a great song. It's just not the song that people like.
People think. I know.
On The Voice, someone sang that, and remember Christina Aguilera, like, you can sing everything. You can sing gospel. I'm like, where? Because this isn't gospel. But anyhow, he hears her sing this song, and that reignites the person whose dream he kind of tried to snuff out because he was down. Well, the one who
it was really also kind of an act of meanness.
Oh, completely.
Well, because that's where he was.
It wasn't just meanness. It's easier to fail when you can have someone fail with you.
Oh, absolutely. Because he says us. He goes, you and I.
That's what I'm saying. It wasn't even just about being mean. It was about the fact that if he didn't have hope, no one else could have hope. So he needed someone else to be down in his level. And how often are we like that? Where we go, well, I feel crappy, so you should feel crappy too.
Yeah. And so I guess that's part of the arc too, that meanness / selfishness.
Yes, very selfish.
/ we've got to focus everything on me because it's me who's broken.
It's me who's broken. I dated someone once in my 20s who said to me, you're supposed to be helping me change and grow as a person. And I said, but if I'm focused on you and you're focused on you, who's focused on me?
But the point is,
crickets.
The point was, it wasn't supposed to be.
Because he was Buster. He was stuck in his own.
He was stuck in his
own. I am the star of this, and everyone else is literally my support. So everything you do is supposed to be focused on me. And I'm like, also, I'm a person who has an ego, and I wasn't going to very long stay in a relationship that wasn't about me. So it's a whole nother thing that we'll talk about in therapy.
And again, that happens a lot in all these movies. I think a lot about the other movies that I know I want to talk about in this series, like Flight. You've seen Flight with Denzel Washington.
Yeah.
Is a beautiful movie of redemption, but very hard movie. And but just about a lot of what happens when people are doing things that they need to be redeemed from, right?
Yeah.
That they undervalue / on the spectrum hurt other people. And often, like I said, under the guise of either I need them to get my dream, but I don't either realize or want to recognize that I'm hurting other people, or it's that, well, that's just the way things go, and that's just the way things are. Leslie is muted. So we will say this just to be for real, for real, for real. Leslie and I are both moms, and we both have kids under the age of 10 and who often need things. So I know when we first recorded this last week, I had people knocking on my door, person knocking on my door. So that might happen because, hashtag real.
Real. We real. Okay, I wanted to say, and I know we're probably going to wrap up soon, but so far we've answered who we I think, answered about the redemption arc. And I think that we can decide that there's some other characters even that we haven't gotten to, but that to me, like I said, the writing of this movie gives these characters not just the Disney, I didn't like you, and now we're friends, or now we're dating, and I've learned something, and we've slayed a dragon. It talks about things like, how we think women are supposed to be. Three of the main characters are women.
Yeah.
One is Mina, who's this very timid elephant. One is Rosita, who is a mom who's a pig who's got 25 kids.
Literally 25
kids, whose husband works all day, and she has it as a dream. One of the things that I liked about it is that it did not make her dithering. They didn't make her, why can't I sing at the thing? She figures out how to do it. She, at one point, as my mother said, she's an engineer. She engineers this. She asked her husband, hey, can I do this thing? And he doesn't really have time to help her. So she stays up all night and figures out how to make this contraption, this very Rube Goldberg-esque contraption that will get the kids up, get them fed, take the dishes off their table.
That's right.
Give them all of their backpacks and close the door and lock the door as they leave. And so she figured all this out because as women, particularly, and as parents, we have to sometimes figure out how to do everybody's job. And rather than say, I can't do this because I don't have time, she worked 2 jobs that day. She, as a mom, she had to prepare. It's like we talk about, like, when before you go on vacation, you have to do twice as much work before you go on vacation, so you can actually go on vacation, nobody bothers you. Right. So is it really a vacation? And that's what Rosita does. And she's like, I have to do everything. I know I got to do it, but I also have to do it in a way that I can still have this time, finite time, to do what I need to do. And that's a very, it could have been anyone, but it's a very typical thing that mothers do. Yeah. And then there's Ash, who is dating this guy who she has allowed to believe that he's the talented one.
My gosh, yeah.
Even though he's clearly not.
Clearly is not.
Awful, Lance, he's awful. But she at first doesn't think about when Buster Moon says, I want you and not you. It doesn't make any, at first she's like, huh? Because, and then he can't imagine, because it's like, and all of his song lyrics are like, my stupid girlfriend. I mean, it's all like awful. Because,
and you want to hit him with his guitar,
Yes. And because he could not imagine that anybody would want her and not him.
And not him.
So if they didn't want both of them, come on, Ash, we're leaving, because it's like, well, because this dream is about me. It's about my dream, and you don't have your own dream.
And what's so funny is when she then decides to do it, and he's still around, and she said he wanted me to do these silly pop songs, he will only sign off on her dream if she does it a certain way. Because she goes, well, I could, listen to koala, sing what the koala says, because i.e., if you're part of this, you're not smart enough or talented enough to do this on your own terms. And she said, well, I thought I could write a song. And he says, not everybody can do that. People think that they can do that, but not everybody can do that. So even with that, with her being better than him, he's deciding the terms of which that has to go.
And he actually described himself. He was not as great a songwriter as he thought he was.
No, in her song that she writes, actually she wrote it kind of about their breakup. It's a great song.
Yes, I know.
Get it all free, all free, all free. It's a great song. But yeah, so we talked about Mina, we talked about Rosita, we talked about Ash. Also a smaller character who is kind of sort of bookcase. But so Gunter is this fabulous pig who they pair up to partner with Rosita to be an act together. And Gunter doesn't really go through much of a redemption arc because Gunter is Gunter.
We can see.
But he's a very enthusiastic person who has decided, I think it'd be a great Gunter movie. And I wrote down any of these characters
We'll make your own movie.
Yeah.
Any of these characters, because they are so all richly drawn. I would love to see where Gunter came from. And if Gunter was that confident.
That's what I loved about Gunter. I said this to you the first time I saw the movie, Lynn, is that in any other movie, Gunter would be just the comic relief. But Gunter gives Rosita, who is also a pig, confidence. And she's already married. They're not romantic. It's not like, oh, we're thrown together. It's not Johnny and Baby. It's that she sees this guy who's got his red in his German accent, his stretchy red leather card, and he's out there doing his thing. He has no qualms about it.
No, and he pulls her in. He pulls her in, and like you said, helps to give her the confidence to do it. And one thing I want to go back to just a little bit about Rosita is you talked about the fact that she realized she didn't really have any help from her husband, who was doing what he was supposed to do. But when he got home, he was really of no help to her. He depended on her to do all of that. But finally, she got to a point where she said, look, you figured out, I'm gone. And all of a sudden, the whole thing was there about, hey, there's more to being a dad than just bringing home the bacon.
The bacon, because they were pigs. How often is it that as people, and I think also once again as women, that we don't tell people how hard our lives are? It doesn't look like Rosita had ever explained how hard her life was. It was just assumed that she
was always there, and
he was always there. So when
all he saw was the final product.
Exactly, because he came home, everybody was fed, the dishes were done, the kids were alive, everything was okay. And so he figured that it was easy. I mean, I know with my late husband, who I loved, that there were a couple of times that I left him alone with our child, where I would come home and he was happy, but he would look like I had he had been run over with a bus because
but he didn't
realize how hard it was.
I know. Lynn has something that she's wanting to say.
Oh no, I was just gonna say it's that thing about partnering with somebody is that my husband is the main source of income here. I have a theater company, I work, but he, thank God, makes most of contributes the most monetarily, and then I contribute I actually homeschooled this year, but being the one who does that and does the house stuff. But I actually said to him early on, I said, as much as I know it's my job to maintain the house.
Ladies, you have this. I'm stepping out for a moment. I'll be right back. Keep talking.
Okay. Say hi to Brooks.
Hashtag life. Even job, and we've agreed partner-wise that I'm going to do this. It is not my goal in life to be somebody who maintains the house. And I have other things in my life that I want to, not that just what I want to do, but I think that it's my God-given.
Your calling.
Thank you, that's the word, calling to do. So, but it's then figuring out how all of those things are going to get done, and how you're going to do your calling, and also, cook, because I'm home and he comes home right before dinner, right? Even though he's decided he's actually taken on cooking on the weekends,
which is wonderful.
It's fantastic. But it's all getting what we need, and I love that. I'd love to see how in the second movie, so at the end of the first movie, Rosita's in the show, and the husband brings all the kids to the show.
Right, which of course he shouldn't. And then the kids have a different appreciation for their mother also, which as a mother is like, yeah, I want you to see me as more than just the lady who gets you up in the morning and gives you breakfast. And I hope that as she goes through her whole reinventive literally, where she comes up with the mechanisms that get the kids dressed and get them out, and then locks the door, that maybe the kids are thinking, hey, I didn't know mommy could do that, you know?
And, and that's such a very interesting thing. I didn't even think about talking about this, but it's brilliant, is your kids seeing what you do, and your kids seeing what makes you happy, and your kids, my kid is in my classes, and my kid has come with me to meetings and has come with me to, sort of sit backstage. I did I've hired people to come watch my kid in backstage. It's a whole thing. Leslie, we were talking about Rosita's kids being able to see what she did and recognizing her.
Right.
And
she reinvents herself.
Right. And I was talking about my son getting to see what I do, and your son, I didn't say this, but yes, your son getting to see what you do, and that they see a whole picture of us. So that reinvention is on so many levels.
So many levels. And because people get to see the whole of you, getting to see my mother, when we were living in Florida, a couple times was the mistress of ceremonies for her sorority's big luncheon. And I already knew how great she was, but getting to see other people realize how great she was, and she looked so beautiful with her hair wrapped, and she just was the star of the show, and watching all of her sorors, her sorority sisters come up to her and just go, I didn't know you could do all that. It was wonderful watching other people realize the whole of her. Or anytime that I've seen Lynne do something, and to go, everyone gets it, she's hilarious.
I know.
She's hilarious. It's wonderful. And the fact that you're right, Lynne, I hadn't even thought about that Rosita's kids and her husband got to see what it was. So she wasn't just now this person who kept the train running at home. She was this person who had a whole other life that wasn't about
She was a star.
Yes. And interests that weren't about them. That part of her, and the fact that the movie chose to once again have her dither about it, say, I'm going to figure out how to do both.
Yeah.
Mom, so it's on me.
Because ultimately there's nothing wrong with if you decide that your job is going to be being a homemaker. I'm
glad you said that, Lynne, because it's very important that people realize that if you decide to do that, it should be hopefully a choice that you make. And it shouldn't be something that you catch grief about. Remember when I was younger, you were almost made to feel ashamed if you say, and sometimes that still happens, I'm a stay-at-home mom. This is what I have chosen to do. It wasn't something that was slapped on me against my will. In some cases it might have been. But when people are able to say no, and I'm not going to let you make me feel bad about my choices.
Exactly. And like other side, where it's not people who've decided to stay at home making everyone else feel like they're working or awful for being outside the home, or that obviously you would have chosen this. It's everybody owning what your choice was and what your choice is, and being like, I'm gonna do that and you do you. Yeah, Leslie.
Did we talk about Johnny?
No, we haven't talked about Johnny, and we haven't talked about Mike. And we probably have 10-ish minutes. So we talked about other women, we talked about Ann Gunter. Johnny, who I honestly, can I say this? I know, can I say that I have an issue with the gorilla being
being what?
Being the criminal family, being the gorilla, being the criminal family.
Yes.
Because racism.
Because racism. Now, yes, they were all voiced by white people. So
Cockney British people. Yeah.
Exactly. But, and I have to stop doing that because that's a horrible symbol now. But I did have a thing of like this big black being the
villain.
Criminal.
The big hulking. Although he was very sweet, and that his sweetness belied what you look at him when he's a gorilla, because you go, it could have been any other kind of monkey. He could have been, I don't know. They could have been any sort of thing. I mean, there was some very funny imagery about it, like when they're wearing these masks, they have like the bunny mask over the girl.
Bunny.
It's very funny. It's very funny. But yeah, the choices are made, and sometimes as a writer, you have to look at choices. And as I reviewed and review still movies and TV for living or whatever, I still get paid for that. We're in books and all that stuff. So if you want me to do that, by the way, call me. You can pay me to do that. But you have to look at choices that people made, and sometimes choices are very subliminal. And I wonder if anyone in the room thought, is this going to be problematic to have the criminal family be the monkeys? It's sort of like in Zootopia, where they make the choice about, why do you suspect the fox is lying? Because he's a fox. And why do you expect the bunny is always right? And the bunny thought she was always right, even when she wasn't, because she's a bunny.
Right. The herbivores and the carnivores. And also interesting too, in case anyone's looking at this and saying they're making race out of everything, research the imagery behind King Kong and the imagery behind a gorilla, and some people's minds standing in for a big black man holding, because he's so obsessed with this beautiful
white
physical
favorite. Yeah.
Right. So we won't go way into that, but all this to say, if you're gonna watch this and accuse me and us of saying things, there is precedent, and I invite you to look at it and look at that imagery. So,
and understand that these things were not done. Look at the King Kong thing. Certainly, I don't think that the people who wrote Sing said we're going to make this thing about that.
No, not at all.
Let me say, ladies, that I purposely did not mention that because I'm aware of the fact that when I came of age, I was the radical in my family, and that was one of the first things that came to mind. Well, why the gorilla have to be black? Why the bear have to be, So I purposely left that out, but I did wonder if anyone else had that reaction also. Well,
we were raised by you.
Yeah.
Yes. So of course we were, because literally my mother and I will sit, because we live in the same house, and there's 3 televisions in the house, but sometimes if we're watching something at the same time, we'll go, what? At the same time, it's like, what? You said what? That wasn't, and we watch the same trailers of things, and they have the same thought to go, oh. Okay.
So as far as getting back to this movie, we're not saying that Sing is racist. We're not saying Sing is
not.
Right. That was for me watching this. I had to reconsider and maybe do a little redemptive thinking myself.
It was clearly, it wasn't about, I believe that it was about that he was this big, it could have been any animal that was big, and like a rhinoceros or anything that seems to be dexterous,
powerful,
and big and powerful, but had the sweet soul, the sweet singing voice, and the contrast between those things. And at the same time that his family, his father is very much committed to being thuggy and doesn't understand Johnny.
Yes, and wants his son to follow that path.
Well, and also because Johnny at first, because he's afraid to, does not explain how important this is to him. He lies and says he's going someplace else. So when he messes up like the big heist or whatever, he's a failure.
And they all get arrested.
Because he doesn't feel that he can say to him, this is all of me.
Right.
You never noticed.
And you wonder if he even knew his dad, if his dad even knew that he could sing.
I don't.
So it's just very surprised.
Right. It's this beautiful thing. Right. His dad is in jail and hears him sing on TV and breaks out to go find him, to go
and hug him and tell him he was proud.
He's proud of him.
And it's this beautiful.
Yeah, because he had said just prior to that he didn't want anything else to do with him.
Right. No son of mine would do anything like that. You're not even really like my son. And so.
Right.
So Eddie's arc was beautiful everywhere that it went back to. One interesting person who may get redeemed and may actually get eaten by a bear in the movie is Mike is, like we said, Seth MacFarlane from Family Guy, and he is this amazing singer and saxophone player.
Amazing.
But he's also really mean and horrible.
Rat than a mouse.
He owes lots of people money.
Yeah.
That possibly, spoiler, getting eaten by bears, but it's kind of left open-ended. You kind of don't know if he does or.
I know. But Brooks and I are convinced that he does not.
Okay. He does, okay. So, but what's interesting though is that, but right before that scene, Mina, the elephant, has
been so mean to.
He's been so mean to her.
So mean to her. She's really been like one of the main targets of his wrath and desire, and he sees how beautiful she is.
Yes.
And his eyes literally get open to that. So there is some room for redemption. And if he is in the second movie, maybe we'll see that.
Yeah, maybe. And he actually does pay homage to her. He apologizes to her because he's been so full of himself.
Does he apologize?
Yeah. He takes his hat off.
And he takes his hat off.
Oh yeah, that's right.
And
he does.
Yeah, like,
and you can see that it is real.
And then he's been one thing, and that they're able to do all this with like animated mice, that he has this moment, because also everything was about, not just, it was about what he wanted, but also that he was very talented, and that
he knew
he knew it. And so he literally assumes the money is his. So when he tells the bears, well, I'm going to win, obviously, so the money is there, and they come. Whatever, to get the money.
He's actually gotten credit from a bank just based on his word that he $100,000.
And by the way, that's not how credit works. So if you're getting your financial advice from this movie about animated mice,
don't do it. Don't do
koalas, the Bank of America is not going to say, "Oh, you're going to win American Idol? Well, please, here's a check." Just do it. It's not a thing. No. So, and he's driving cars and got a fancy suit. And the very first time you see Mike, he literally shakes somebody down for money because they give him a couple of coins in the tip jar, and he literally shakes him down until all his money falls.
Yes, he goes through the guy's pockets.
And wallet. I mean, and it seems like, although that upset me so badly as a person who lives in cities who go, how dare you? How dare you? But anyway, so mommy, do you think that and I think we've said it, I think I know what you're going to say, but do you believe that the various redemption arcs of these characters pay off and that they do become different people?
They do. And of course, we started out with the main character, Buster Moon. So you do get to see him be successful, but it was because of the intervention of Nana Noodleman, because she had her own redemption and rebirth. She even hugs her, or allows her grandson to hug her, because at first, remember, she didn't want anything to do with him. She thought he was a ne'er-do-well. He actually was, living off his parents, kind of thing. But that was another thing too. We didn't talk about the fact that that Eddie came through for his friend. We did talk about that some.
Right, he takes off, and because he's a she, he drives the cars, buses them.
Yes.
And
it's Nana Noodleman.
It's a really beautiful movie, and I will say that I love Lynn and I have young kids, and my mother is always around them, so we see a lot of these movies. I think we would have seen these movies even adults without kids.
I
actually saw this movie. I got a babysitter and went and saw this movie with her.
I went and saw this.
That's hilarious. I saw it with Brooks. But
one more person who was a minor character but important, and I thought about it when you mentioned Bank of America, was Judith, who maybe worked for maybe it was Bank of America, I don't know. But Judith started out, she's a llama. She's very stiff-necked, and she was there to do her job, which was either to collect the money or
shut it all down,
close down the theater. And at the end, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, can I say something? Because Lynn and I had this discussion about a different movie that we did as a tangent that we didn't go into for Devil Wears Prada, was this similar movie that was awful, honestly, the Shopaholic, Confessions of a Shopaholic, whatever it was, that they cast the credit guy who's chasing her as the bad guy, when he was just doing his job, and she literally at one point, to get away from him, tells people he's an abusive boyfriend. I mean, it's not funny, it's just awful. And literally this man, she's bad with credit, she owes money and he's trying to collect, and that Judith was doing her job.
She was doing her job, but nobody liked her.
No one liked her, but I like the fact
she was
that
doing her job.
The movie does own, yeah, Judith shows up in the middle of the show, but if you were chasing somebody for money and you looked on TV,
and there they were.
And there they were in the property that you own that they're not supposed to be in, wouldn't you go?
Probably, except a part of me wanted her not to do that, wanted her to at least let the show go on. It didn't matter though, because
we had this conversation. Alex watched it yesterday, my son and I watched it, and he said, she's so mean. And I said, but is she's told them that they're not supposed to be there. Right. They literally are doing a party / TV show in a space that they don't own. So even though you would hope, like you said, that she'd be like, oh, I see they're coming and whatever, blah, 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 that was not required.
And if you were her boss, wouldn't you fire her for saying you literally knew how to catch these people? Because right now they're having a giant show that's being covered by TV and you didn't go and shut it down. And we just trying to get our money. They're just trying to get paid. You know what I'm saying?
Right. Exactly. They're a business. They were doing what they were supposed to do. They were about this.
Yeah. So, and at the end, it's all made right. And they're, right.
It's all, yeah. And she actually kind of smiles and so on. Right. Are you getting ready to talk about the cameraman? Okay, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say this because I know we are about to wrap up. But I will say this actually, I think is, and you don't have to end it like this, but I think it's very interesting is that one of the reasons that, and she smiles and whatever, and maybe she sees their humanity, whatever, blah, blah, blah. But they've also,
she's just happy because they're getting paid.
They've also given her money in part, I think, of the whole redemption thing is that not just that you feel better about yourself. I feel so great now that you've made it right.
Yes.
People that you, or animals that you have hurt along the way.
Yeah.
And and again, not going way, dude, that's kind of a reckoning that our nation is going through now, is that things aren't just okay when you want them to be. Things are okayer when you have actually listened to people that you've hurt. So that was, I think, with Judith standing there, it wasn't just that she was this great person, it's that they were able to pay for the thing.
Right. And maybe that helped her to keep her job, who knows? And may I say one more thing? And that is that whole redemption thing was something that we saw with the interviewer or the newscaster who was there. At first, he was very clearly ready to make fun of this whole thing.
Right, it's all a joke.
And ridicule. And then later on, I think he saw some of, he saw the talent, obviously.
Right.
And he saw some of the heart of these animals, these people who had put themselves out there. And so his thing changes. So the whole thing, the idea of an arc is that it covers a multitude of people and situations. Right. And so you hope, as you said, that the bad pieces somewhere along the line give way to better pieces, and it blesses actually people as it goes. And as you redeem and get better, that you give that blessing to others as well.
That is a beautiful way to end this. Thank you guys so much who's ever watching.
You. This was fun.
We had like 15 people last week. Maybe we'll have 30 this time who watched our show. We can only get better. But if you guys have any suggestions for movies or TV shows that we can talk about, please do get in contact with us.
If you want to be a guest.
You want to be a guest, but only a real guest, not someone who's going to try to Zoom bomb us and say something weird, because we will cut you off. And we'll call whoever yes. And that includes our children.
I know, not our children too. Oh my gosh.
Anyway, so either they will be the people doing the cutting off, or they will be the people who are being cut off. We don't know. We
Goodness.
might have them as guests one day. That would be terrible. Anyway,
That would be amazing. That would be something.
thank you guys so much.
Thank you all for having me, and hello everybody who's watching.
Thank you, Mommy. You were great. See, we knew that she would be good because we talk about her. Basically, as Lynn said last time, we were going to call the show since we were talking about this anyway, because we have these discussions. We
All the time.
have podcast worthy discussions in the kitchen or doing our walking around. So we figured we might as well actually do a podcast. So thank you guys so much. We'll see you next time.
Bye, everybody.
Bye. Oh man, I should have mentioned my book.